You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Rapoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting here with me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Rapoff.
Yeah, it's great to be here again this week. So.
It is, yeah. We're here to talk about a Wilson victory.
Always more fun.
Yeah, it's always fun for this show when Wilson wins, clearly. Also, we're celebrating Friday night and yesterday with the team you're sporting on your shirt right now.
That's right.
It's been quite the eventful season for Phillies fandom, but we're not here to talk about that, though we could. It's been exciting. But we're going to focus on the high school gridiron, and I think we'll bring back a segment that people gave you crap for. Why do you talk about those teams? Because it's important, and I think maybe we should start there tonight.
I was gonna say, and it's honestly even more important now.
Yeah,
or I shouldn't say more important, but maybe more relevant now.
Things have become more clear. The
Right.
clarity of the District 3 6A playoffs is coming into focus, and this week a lot of crazy stuff happened. I mean, crazy relative, but when you have the top three or three of the top four, I'm not sure how they were rated in the power rankings entering this weekend's games, but we saw Harrisburg lose to State College at home.
Yeah, that was.
We saw
crazy.
Cumberland Valley lose to Carlisle, which that's probably the biggest shock of them all.
Yeah.
Carlisle is a team that has I didn't want to say good or bad wins, but Carlisle was probably most well known for this year, on this show, for really beating up on Mifflin in week 2 when we were starting to come into focus that, oh man, Mifflin might be down this year.
All right.
And that continues to be the case. But then a few weeks back on a Thursday night, they got smoked by Central Dauphin, who we know Wilson beat Central Dauphin in week 2, the same week that Carlisle was beating up on Mifflin. Wilson was squeaking by Central Dauphin. Central Dauphin it seems to be down this year, at least record-wise, but they beat up on Carlisle pretty good. Cumberland Valley, for all intents and purposes, was seen as one of the top teams in District 3 6A, and they very well still are, because I thought you had said that there might be an issue with their quarterback suffering an injury or not playing because of an injury.
I saw a tweet that said he was not playing in this game. I don't know if that meant from that point on or if he was out. I don't really know, but
yeah. So, obviously if you're shorthanded, that's not great, but we don't know the severity or how long that's going to last, but it's definitely a footnote in that game.
Right.
With Carlisle, and I saw someone say one of the biggest victories in Carlisle program history, beating Cumberland Valley, and that win very well could get Carlisle into the District 3 6A playoffs. I put out projections based on games through week 8 of the regular season, which also includes a Hempfield loss to Exeter, and something that I feel like we need to put out there because we talked about it last week after Wilson lost to Hempfield, is that there's going to be some people confused as to why Wilson can't win a section title if Hempfield just lost. Because Exeter is, yes, in the Lancaster-Lebanon League, but it's a different section. That is a non-league game. It has no bearing on the section championship. So Hempfield is still undefeated in Section 1 play.
Just like Wilson's lost to Exeter last year.
Right.
I mean, I know Exeter wasn't part of the LL League, but it's honestly it's no different because it's a non-league game.
Well, it's essentially is a crossover game, but it's not dictated by the LL.
It's not a mandated
league.
crossover.
For 4 years, Wilson and Manheim Central played. That was an LL matchup given out by the LL League, but it was did not count in any LL metrics standings. It would not have impacted any win-loss against section teams because it wasn't a section game. It was just a mandated non-league crossover game. Exeter and Hempfield decided to play each other again for this next 2-year cycle, and Hempfield did lose. Exeter beat them 44-22. No bearing whatsoever on the league championship. So for Wilson to have a chance at a co-league championship, Hemphill would need to lose in week 9 or week 10, and Wilson would have to keep winning, which they did Friday night at Penn Manor, and we're going to get to that shortly. But I think first I will try to bring up the power rating predictions, or maybe I should bring up the actual power ratings first. Let's bring up them ones as they stand right now, and I do not know if they were updated by the schools, because that falls on the athletic directors or maybe the coaches. I'm not exactly sure who gets to enter those each time, but it's
apparently some schools don't know who's
well, yeah, because it takes forever, and then I think D3 sometimes has to override it. So this is where we stand at the moment. So this is not all teams have entered yet, because Manheim Township is not in there. York William Penn actually might have missed a game like Harrisburg, so they might be accurate there at 5-2 with Harrisburg. So Township's game is not entered yet, and there looks to be a few teams in the bottom half that are not entered, but will make a difference in the power rating. So not, nothing's official here, but this gives you kind of a broad view of what's going on. Carlisle has made their way up into the field with that win over Cumberland Valley, all the way up to 8. Cumberland Valley sitting there at 2 with Central York in the top spot. Central York now has a direct path to the number 1 seed throughout this. There's a good chance that Central York will be that team sitting at the top of the bracket when all is said and done.
William Penn week
they
10?
Do.
Yeah, they might be able to lose that game and still be there, potentially.
Possibly. Right. But I would anticipate Central York, unless something crazy happens in week 9 or 10, to be the team that enters the District 3 6A tournament as the number 1 seed. As Wilson, you can see, currently sitting at number 7, but that will take care of itself should Wilson continue to win. As you can see, Manheim Township sitting there at 5. Wilson gets to play them in week 10. Wilson also gets the chance to add to their win column, which will send them up by beating McCaskey this Friday, which we'll also talk about a bit later.
And just to kind of emphasize another point that comes up year to year, your opponent your opponent strength,
it's always
is
baked
already
in. Yes,
counting in. So we play McCaskey this coming week, and McCaskey has 1 win, I think.
Yeah,
and it was week 1
against John Bartram or someone like that.
But that is already factored into Wilson's power ranking, so it's not going to go down because of a McCaskey. Because we're playing a team that only has 1 win this week, that's already factored in. Yeah, if we're playing an undefeated team, that would already be factored in.
Back in 2019, when may have been the first year I did this, definitely one of the first years I did it, people were telling me I was crazy that Wilson was going to jump Manheim Township because Wilson, I think, had to play McCaskey. And they're like, oh, well, they'll beat McCaskey, but that's when McCaskey's strength of schedule. No, that's not how it works. The strength of schedule for your opponents is built in all the way through.
Right.
It doesn't. It can fluctuate as they win and lose.
Right.
But it's not like it wasn't counting it. It was already counting it.
Right.
So a McCaskey losing,
which is why you don't see those huge jumps.
Right.
Typically,
yes.
You would see much bigger jumps if you had that factored in.
Yes. Yeah. So if McCaskey wasn't impacting Wilson's strength of schedule already, it would be a problem.
Right.
We could see things change even with a win when you're throwing in a team that has only won 1 game, but that is already included in the calculation. So that cannot negatively impact you because it's already doing so.
Right.
But here is the predictions that I went through recently. After 8 games played, then I, quote, simulated. I just guessed at who was going to win each game. They're educated guesses. I'm looking at the teams and who they're playing. I'm not just going, well, this team will win and this team will lose. I'm looking at the schedule, looking at common opponents, trying to figure out what's the best case scenario. Obviously, I don't know all of the injury statuses of teams around the state because, again, you have to calculate it for all 19 teams in District 3 6A and then all the teams that they play. Right. So my file has over 40, 45, maybe even 50 different teams that I have to predict the outcome of all their games. Back when I did this in week 5, that was a lot to get an end of the season prediction. Now I'm only predicting 2 weeks, so it's not as big a deal. But as you can see, and if you're watching this and reading the tweet I sent out yesterday, This is a projection following week 8 and predicting what will happen in games 9 and games 10 for the teams that have all those games. Like we already said, I believe Harrisburg and William Penn both will only play 9 games this year because they had a week that they had an open date and they never filled it. This also, for Wilson specific, this counts on Wilson winning both games. Right. Because that's what we're going to focus on. Put that out there. Wilson beats McCaskey. Wilson beats Manheim Township. And that's the big one. That's the one that's going to be in question. That's the one that people will think is a toss-up. But for this prediction, Wilson beats Manheim Township. So where does that get Wilson winning the next 2 weeks? That gets them up to the 5 seed. I know there's people that think that you can get to the 4, and it's not out of the realm of possibility, but you need those teams in front of us to lose. And I'm not sure any of the teams in front of us will lose again in the next 2 weeks. Right. It was shocking that all of them lost this past week. While we all thought Hempfield would struggle with Exeter, I don't think any of us thought Harrisburg and Cumberland Valley would definitely lose, especially Cumberland Valley. That was
Harrisburg State College. If you would have told me that, it wouldn't surprise me, but I probably would have picked Harrisburg. But if you've told me Harrisburg's without their quarterback, then maybe so there's so much that goes into
a lot
these
going
games.
Into it, yeah.
And like you said, you're predicting 50 some games. While you've shown on your Fearless Friday forecast,
I've actually been pretty
you've
good
done
at
pretty
it.
well. But it's hard to get all of those right, and some of those would have a bigger influence than others.
Well, right, and went back in week 5 when I did this. Guess what? I didn't have Harrisburg losing to State College, and I didn't have Cumberland Valley losing to Carlisle. And it'll be interesting to go at the end of the season to go back and look at the week 5, after week 5 projections I did. This one, and then what the final one was, just to see how close.
Not to harp on it, but kind of like your NLCS prediction from 14 months ago.
Yes. I called it Padres Phillies. I have the receipts.
You did.
But yeah, so back in after week 5, when I predicted out through week 10, I did 3 scenarios. Wilson winning all their games, Wilson losing one of the 2 big ones between Hempfield and Manheim Township, and Wilson losing both. And at the time, the highest Wilson could get was 5. That was winning out. Now, a lot of stuff has happened that we weren't sure would happen, so Wilson may have been able to get up. If they beat Hempfield, Wilson probably had the opportunity to get to 3 or 4.
Right.
But that didn't happen. So now you're left with, okay, do they beat Manheim Township? If they do, I think you're looking at 5. If they don't, 6 or 7 is where you're going to be sitting. And you can see the top 4 teams have been the ones that we've been saying are most likely to be the favorites to win District 3 6A. But Wilson Township and York William Penn have to be in that conversation. And now with Carlisle beating Cumberland Valley, can you honestly say that any of these teams could win the championship?
Any of those teams could.
Any of these teams could win.
Yeah, which is crazy, but it's exciting, but it's a little nerve-wracking when I particularly want one team to win. Which
one are you pulling for?
I think
careful with what you say
as we end the show every week. Go Bulldogs!
Yeah.
Right?
So,
even when I forget last week,
I know. The coaches would probably be like, "Are they really talking about playoffs to the start of the show?"
Mad.
But there's a lot that happened in D3 6A with Hempfield, Harrisburg, and Cumberland Valley. I want to make sure everyone was aware of what was going on. There are 2 weeks left to go. We'll talk about the game against McCaskey coming up here, which is senior night, so going to be a big one at Gursky. But first, let's wrap up Game 8, which was a Bulldogs victory down in Millersville at Penn Manor. The Bulldogs continue their undefeated streak against the Comets. Once again, not exactly sure how long the streak is, or the number, or the amount of consecutive wins, because the stats book has 1, and I've seen media report another. It's only off by 1, much like the Reading series was. So it's either 31 or 32. Wilson maintains the undefeated status against the Comets with a big victory, 56-7, Justin, and it
wasn't that close.
Well, it wasn't, but also I don't want to say I was anxious or nervous going into the game.
No, but there was an anticipation because you wanted to see how we responded from
right.
last week.
Respond after a loss, after a league loss. One that
stings.
It ruins your one goal. Like it has essentially, by and large, ended the ability to at least win an outright league championship. Like that's not happening. You would need Hempfield to lose the last 2 weeks. I can't see that happening. Still have the chance to share it. That's why you need to take care of business, and you need to take care of business for everything we were just talking about: playoff seeding, making the playoffs. So it was big, but Penn Manor had been getting better last year and this year. They beat Cedar Crest. I know, I don't think anyone's like, well, Cedar Crest isn't that good, but at the beginning of the year, people were thinking that Cedar Crest or Penn Manor would be up there with the three, challenging the three Wilson, Manheim Township, and Hempfield, the three ones expected to challenge for the crown. They thought Cedar Crest and Penn Manor could hang in there, and when those two teams played really close to one another in week 4.
Yeah,
Penn Manor beat Cedar Crest 13-9 or something like that. They were like, oh, okay. Because honestly, I thought Cedar Crest was the better team between Cedar Crest and Penn Manor.
I agree. And the Cedar Crest we saw lost their quarterback, or at least the level that their quarterback typically is able to play early in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a bit of uncertainty and just not knowing how you're going to respond because, everybody can want to come back fired up from, to kind of take out some frustration from the week before, but sometimes your mind is still on the week before, and that can lead to a little bit less focus than maybe you want or need, and that can create a problem.
Well, the Bulldogs answered all those questions very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. They jumped out to a lead and I mean didn't give it up the rest of the game. It wasn't a close match at all in any way. Wilson received, right? Did Wilson receive?
No, I think we kicked off.
Did we kick off? See, I can't even remember now. Once Wilson got the ball, they drove down the field, scored a touchdown. Held Penn Manor, I believe, forced a 3-and-out, drove down the field, scored a touchdown. It was just one after another, just constant.
I'm not saying that the outcome would have been different, but that was a big one right there. It was a 2-touchdown game, I think, and they completed a pass on third down. I think it was third down. It might have been fourth, but right at a yard short of the stick, and the safety, I think it was Eddie. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was Eddie. Came up and hit him right there and drove his feet and ran him back, and they tackled him short. This was a crazy play. They weren't going to get it anyway, but the quarterback tried to pull it instead of giving it to the fullback up the middle and lost it before he was hit, I believe, and our guy just ran it in for a touchdown.
Yeah, so it's awesome. 14-0 before anyone could really blink an eye. Then it was 21-0 after Hunsaker hit Mackay. Then Eddie returned a fumble. It was 28-0. Wilson's up 35-0 then, and then right before half, the video, the clip you're watching, if you're watching this live, is once again a punt return touchdown by Cam Jones. Now, how did Cam Jones get the ball? Well, they, of course, were scheming, planning, both Wilson. How do we get the ball?
That was a great pass.
It was by Patrick Donato to Ofure Oyali. And there's your final score. Penn Manor did, in fact, have yardage. It's just not entered here in Huddle, apparently. Although it wasn't a lot, and we'll get to that momentarily. But, yeah, so Wilson's up 42-0 at halftime on Cam Jones's 5th punt return touchdown of the season. He's only had 6 attempts, so he is scoring a touchdown at over 83% clip on punt returns. That doesn't happen. Those are video game numbers.
Yeah.
Not only did he set the single season program record for most punt return touchdowns in a season, and by the way, he's got at least 2 games, honestly, at least 3 games left to add more. But he also set a new program record for longest punt return for a touchdown, besting Jason Cape from 2002 in the District 3 championship game with Central Dauphin. That was 93 yards. And Scott Camperini in, I believe, 1966 against Palmyra went for 93 yards. So, yes, Cam Jones is rewriting the record book nearly every time he touches the ball on punt returns. He now has the program's career record, which he may have already had last year. There's not exactly great records for return touchdowns totals.
It's hard. quick shout out to Joe Peterson. He nailed it right away. I in terms of the yardage, I asked him, and he's like, I got it as 94, and watching the replay, Cam got the ball at the 6. So
well, there you go.
Yeah, that was spot on.
Yeah, did a really splendid job setting it up. And why was it set up? Because this coaching staff, special teams coaches, a lot of times Coach Doms is involved in that heavily. That's always been one of the phases that he focuses on.
Well, it was interesting because as soon as I saw that formation, I was like, they're scheming for a way to get the ball into Cam's hands, or at least deter the punt away from Cam.
Kicking it away from him, right.
And it worked in two facets because Eddie had a good return before that,
right,
up the sideline. And so then it really punishes, and we've talked about this before. It's all easy for the coach to tell the punter, hey, kick it away from number 1.
Right.
Well, now you're putting another guy back there who almost took one to the house. Oh, and then you add to that, there's guys rushing, and we nearly blocked 1 or 2 of the punts. So you can say all you want, don't kick it to so-and-so. It's not that simple,
Right, it's not.
So...
Well, so for those of you that weren't at the game and didn't watch the clip or didn't see it, the special teams scheme was to drop 2 people back. Now, in middle school, we actually dropped 3 back. We formed like a triangle. Generally, in high school, you only have 1 guy back there. Right. And when it's Cam Jones, you only need to have him back there. But then teams kick it out of the end zone or kick it to the opposite side of where he's standing. Right. They don't want him to get the ball because when you're scoring on 83% of your punt returns on the season, you don't want him to have that opportunity to kill you in that phase of the game. So what does Wilson do? Drops another guy back. In this case, it's junior wide receiver safety Eddie Case. And you would prefer to make them return it rather than kick it out of bounds unless you have a guy that can do coffin corner style stuff. Right. But that's hard to do in high school. So instead of kicking it at Cam or absolutely drilling it out of bounds, kick it to the other guy. Make him hurt us. Well, like you said, Eddie made it hurt. He did very well in all of his return attempts. He almost took one all the way back to the house, which we did talk to Cam, Eddie, and one of the blockers, Adam Woods, in our interview later. So we'll bring this up again. But great scheming by the coaching staff, excellent execution by Eddie at the beginning, and then you get to the point where now Eddie's returned. I think he had returned 2 or 3 by that point.
So.
And one of them he had a really nice, and they were all really good returns, but one of them he was close to taking it back himself. And now Penn Manor made a really weird choice of being down 35-0 in the second quarter, having it in Wilson territory, facing 4th down, and they decide to punt. I would have thought you'd go for that there when you're down by so many scores.
When you went for it when
earlier.
It was like maybe a 2 or 3 score game from your own side. 40.
Yeah. So anyways, Wilson puts back their punt return team.
Right. Anytime a team's willing to punt, go ahead. I'll take it.
Cam and Eddie are back there, inside around the 10 or inside the 10. Kick it to Eddie, and what happens? Eddie fields the ball, runs to his left. Let's see if I can pull it up again because video is always fun. So we got to go a little bit farther.
Here,
that was the yeah, here we go. So let me pull it up for you if you're watching it here, and keep an eye on what happens. So here it comes. Snap, punt on 4th and 11. Goes to Eddie at the 10, who runs to his left and then flips it to Cam, and the blockers are all set up downfield. Cam makes a couple guys miss, and there's then no one around. Cam has 3 guys leading the way. High fives Adam Woods on his way into the end zone. Cam asked me, did I get that shot? And I looked, and I did not, unfortunately, get the high five from between Cam and Adam. I did get the flip from Eddie to Cam, though. Yes. It was a long distance. Funny story. I know you heard this already.
I love this story. I was just going to tell you to say it.
So my first reaction that I already said was when they ran out the punting team for that, I was it was a head scratching move to me because you're down by multiple scores. You're in the opponent territory. You don't want to attempt a field goal there because it's unlikely to make it at the high school level, but as you said, they already went for it on fourth down in their own territory. Why would you not go for it in fourth down in the opponent territory? What do you have to lose? So I turned to assistant coach, offensive line coach Brandon Doms, and kind of said, this is a weird decision. And he essentially goes, yeah, this has one of two ways. He's either going to boot it out of the end zone or we're going to score a touchdown. And I looked at him and I said, oh, I'm going down here. And I ran down towards the end zone that Wilson would be scoring in. Well, before I could even get to the 25, they had punted the ball and I saw Eddie field it. And I started taking pictures of the return, and I catch the flip to Cam. Well, now I'm like, oh, now I need to get to the end zone because now Cam has the ball, and I didn't even make it to the end zone by the time that Cam. By the time I stood up and turned to run,
those guys are a little faster.
They're a little faster than me, yeah. And I had 2 cameras on my body, and by the time I stood up and ran, and then I'm like trying to, side hop down the side so I can still take pictures while I'm going, and then the ref got in the way. It was a whole thing. It was unfortunate, but I just like Brandon and I both knew. This is going to be a touchdown. This is going to be a touchdown. This is a bad decision. It's going to be a touchdown. And that's what happened. So, yeah, Cam Jones, new records in the Wilson program book. And I do like, was it what you said after the game? Maybe he'll get the best returner in Berks County this year.
Maybe he'll win the Berks County first team all returner.
Yeah, because he was good enough for All-State, but wasn't good enough for Berks County.
Not that I'm still bitter about that.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, but in terms of the rest of the game, statistically speaking, it was just a dominant performance overall. Wilson, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't even as close as 56-7. Wilson had 16 first downs to Penn Manor's 4.
It was 35-0 with 8 minutes left in the second quarter.
Right. Wilson had 181 yards rushing. Penn Manor had just 41. Wilson had 132 yards passing to Penn Manor 65. So total was 313 to 106, nearly triple. Wilson nearly tripled them up there. Just fantastic execution in every phase. I mean, they scored in every phase.
Yeah.
That's what you want going in. If you can score a touchdown on defense and special teams to go with a hot offense, you're going to win a lot of games. And that's exactly what happened. The only statistic that Wilson didn't win was time of possession. That's because nearly every time they touched the ball, they scored within 5 or 6 plays.
Which is also likely to happen when you score a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown. It's likely to happen.
Wilson was a perfect 6 for 6 in the red zone. An improvement over last week. Absolutely. They were able to spread the ball around on the ground. They had 5 different ball carriers carry the ball 3 or more times. Cleveland Harding led the way in rushing with 63 yards. He had one 44-yard run. Amir Wellmacher had 3 for 34. Quarterback Tommy Hunsker had 3 for 33. Backup quarterback Adam Woods had 3 for 6, but had a touchdown, and that was his first touchdown that he took in himself. And Cam Jones got to work and got done quickly. He had 6 carries for only 29 yards, but had the 2 touchdowns in that phase of the game to go with it. Tommy Hunziker was 7 of 10 for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, and his touchdowns went to Makai Cooper, who had 2 catches for 27 yards, and Brady Klein, who had 2 for 5 in the touchdown. And we saw, and Justin mentioned, beautiful pitch and catch from Patrick Donato to Ofure Odiali for that score near the end of the game. Had a 2-point conversion caused by Austin Lukovic.
What I really liked was the play before that. Donato had to kind of scramble around a little bit and got a pass up, but it was kind of hard, because everybody was already to the end zone, kind of, or at least it appeared that way. This one, man, he got the ball and he threw it up there, put it at a spot, and Ofure caught it. And the defender, I don't even know if the defender had turned around yet. The defender,
he was running at his hip and looking at him.
The timing was perfect, and for guys to get in there who may not get as many of the opportunities to have that timing was phenomenal. That was really great.
It really was. So, there's not really much to say about the offense. They got the job done. There weren't any issues. We're able to get things done quickly, both on the ground and through the air. So things look good in that regard. And then defensively, it felt like they were going to pitch a shutout. If any of the starters played in the second half, I don't think Penn Manor was scoring, especially after their starting quarterback went out. Eli Warple was injured in either late first quarter or early second quarter. It didn't play the rest of the game. Penn Manor couldn't do anything against the ones, and they struggled at time against the backups in the JV.
The backups and younger guys outscored them in the second half.
Yes, they did.
And they played the entire second half.
They did.
And they outscored
the entire second half. So excellent effort all around. Every player that stepped on the field looked good. They gave up the late touchdown, but I think everyone was very happy with the performance.
Yeah.
And defensively speaking, I think one of the highlights has been that it's been a total team effort. We point out the electric ability of Cam Jones on offense and on special teams, but defensively, it's truly been like week to week. It feels like there's always every guy's sharing the load there. They're all making plays when it matters. And that was definitely the case again against Penn Manor. A bunch of guys right there near the top of the tackle sheet and making plays. No sacks this week, but again, Penn Manor are mostly running teams, so that's going to be tough to do when they don't drop back to pass.
And we had some pressures. Like we had some pressures too.
Yep. So. Definitely some pressures from Nick Weitzel, Brendan Hopp, I know, Flushing guys, Tajir, Cassius, all getting in there and forcing some pressures. But Justin, to wrap this up and before we get to the interview, the player of the game. So we have kind of tongue-in-cheek mentioning that odd number weeks we will give Cam Jones the award, but even number weeks he's not getting it. We're going somewhere else, and that's going to hold true here. We're in even number weeks, so we're not giving it to Cam, despite him having 3 touchdowns in
including
the game.
The longest punt return touchdown ever.
Setting a program record for punt return touchdowns and setting a record for longest punt return by a Wilson Bulldog.
I mean this in the nicest way possible, but didn't it still seem like a ho-hum game for Cam?
No, right.
And I don't mean that like in a negative way. I mean that like in the opposite. Like, how ridiculous is it that when they punt to him or not to him, but when they punt and it doesn't go out of bounds or into the end zone, I'm like, oh man, we might score a touchdown.
Well, it's funny because it was deja vu all over again in terms of a special teams play to get the ball in Cam Jones's hand, because last year down at Millersville against Penn Manor, Wilson set up a return where Penn Manor was like, I'm not kicking to Cam Jones, and why would you? So they blooped it to one of the upbacks in like the second row. Who was the upback? It was Tommy Hunsaker, who turned and threw it across the field backwards to Cam Jones. I don't know I can't recall if he scored on that play or not, but I think it set him up big time if he didn't score. I don't think he did, but it set him up deep in Penn Manor's territory because ball's over there. Why would we go over there? Well, you have a quarterback that can throw it back. And we talked about it on this show. It's just funny to see it happen again at Penn Manor with Case flip it to Jones, who takes it to the house. But yeah, like you said, 3 touchdowns, sorry, not enough. But it's an even number week. We're going somewhere else. Right. So I was thinking, I was like, who else does it go to? Who stood up? Because it just felt like a full team effort. It just seemed like the ball was being spread around on offense, and there was a lot of guys making stops and flashing on defense, and on special teams. So I went back and looked kind of across the spectrum of the 8 games and who's been one of the top performers that maybe we didn't pick out yet. And I think we're going to go defense this time.
Okay.
Because, we mentioned Cam's awards 3 phases because he's a big player on defense to go with his offensive and special teams prowess. But really, defensively speaking, I think Isaiah Cassius against Reading was one of the guys that stands out. And Wilson's bread and butter is running the football and playing stout defense. So we want to give some respect to the defense. And where do we go? So I pulled up the year-to-date stats to look at who's the guy that's been the most consistent performer for Wilson in terms of tackles and the big statistics, tackle for loss. So the same guy came up twice. And
so it made it easy for you.
It did make it easy, and what made it even better was that he led the team in tackles at Penn Manor as well. So a 2-for-1 here.
Ding, ding, ding.
And someone that we've talked about a few times on the show already, Just hadn't given the award to him yet, but we're going to make up for that right here. So our player of the game at Penn Manor is senior linebacker Nick Krokona for his performance against the Comets. And I just mentioned it here now, but I'll get into the specifics. Nick had 5 total tackles against the Comets, 1.5 for loss, led the team in that statistic. And year to date, Nick sits on top of the leaderboard across the entire defense with 33 total tackles, 9 for loss, half of that being a sack, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. So Nick has been one of the guys most consistently making plays on defense. And the best part about it, Justin, is he's one of those guys that embodies the senior Wilson football player. It's someone that has opportunities as an underclassman, but hasn't moved into that starting role. He's shifted multiple positions over the years, bides his time, and then makes an impact his senior season. And we've seen that come full circle for Nick.
Yeah, and it's fun to see. It's one of those things where for years, like, you knew a bunch of these guys when they were in middle school, and I didn't necessarily, unless they played water polo at the time. But now, like, getting to know, like, I've known Nick for a few years now, and it's just fun to see him really get that opportunity, and man, is he making the most of it. And that's great. We collectively, the team, needs that, and it's just fun to see.
Yeah, and so he's not just making his mark as linebacker on defense, he's also one of the big guys running down the field on kickoff team and playing on special teams, always making play, and he's always a guy you can count on for 100% effort at all times. So Nick Krokona is our player of the game at Penn Manor. So we'll yield the floor in week 9 and give the opportunity for Cam Jones to reclaim his crown.
Hey, you never know.
But hopefully it's an opportunity for many, many players to get in, get experience, have fun, stay healthy, and then look towards week 10 against Manheim Township.
Yeah, hopefully we're looking at more like a week similar to 2 days ago. Hopefully we're seeing more of that on Friday night.
Yes, for sure. So Wilson wins 56-7, continues their domination of Penn Manor. That's the end of Game 8. But before we get to the Game 9 preview, we do want to do our annual, or shouldn't say annual, weekly housekeeping here and thank our sponsors, primarily my dad, Bill Mays, and Mays Sandwich Shop for supporting the show since day one. Also, a variety of other sponsors, including Mike Drago and MikeDragoSports.com, the Hop family, Andy Herr, which Andy, we're going to see you this week. Didn't see you at Millersville. So
That's
hopefully we get to see you this Friday night. Hopefully
we crossed paths on Friday, but not like literally crossed paths, as in we were going opposite way. Yeah.
And then our 6 anonymous donors. We really appreciate everyone that has taken the time to donate to the show, to sponsor the show, to awesome. Help us out, spread the word. You know, I'm jumping into Justin's like and share, but just all of you that are liking and subscribing and leaving reviews, like all that stuff helps us out, and this has been the best year to date. So
it was so funny, and just in terms of like people talking about the show, and like also like know that I guess people are listening. When we were getting some food, before the game, one of the former players stops by and he's like, I thought I might find you guys here, and then afterwards somebody's like, oh, you guys weren't just joking. Like, you do go here. Yes. Yeah.
And we're coming back here afterwards.
Right, exactly. Too. Like, it was funny.
The caveat was we had to win. Like, we're not going to.
Well, you don't have celebratory stuff.
Right. You don't. Right. I mean, last week we said we weren't celebrating. We weren't getting our gobbler at Wawa because we lost.
The celebratory sandwich.
Celebrate with the gobbler. Can't do that with a loss. So we skipped it. This week, we knew we were going beforehand. Listeners knew we were going because they stopped in. We saw a few of them in there beforehand. And won't call out by name, but we will thank an anonymous donor who ended up paying for our food at the Sugar Bowl. So appreciate them stepping up for that. Yeah, it's just I mean, if you want to pay us in food, like we will gladly accept that, especially at a place that has become a tradition for us. But yeah, we went beforehand. We got our normal, like sandwich and fried food. Almost took some back for the coaches who requested a cheesesteak and a Coke. But And we're like, hey, we'll be back. We'll get our pizza after the victory. And thankfully we got to do that because the team played great. But yes, we are very thankful for our sponsors and for everyone that has supported the show this season. It has definitely been the best yet. And like I said, there's many ways you can do that. It doesn't have to just be, financially. Please visit the website. I'm always updating things on there. And there's usually some information or announcements, especially in the off season, about upcoming events like the golf tournament and registration for the kindergarten, first grade flag football. So occasionally Van Reed or Lincoln Park will reach out with stuff. So definitely keep bulldoghour.com. Check it frequently. And last but not least, our next live show will be 1 week from today. Normal time, normal place, 8:30, Sunday the 23rd. We'll recap Game 9 and look ahead to Game number 10. So once again, I forgot to update the schedule because that is not at the top of my mind. So I'm not even going to put it up for fear of...
It's funny, I was getting text messages today from people who are trying to make plans for the next month or so, and they were asking me about, they're like, wait, so... when is Wilson going to be playing / not playing? And they were asking specifically towards end of October, beginning of November. Essentially, they were confirming that there was a bye.
Yes to end of October, no to first week in November. Remember.
Right.
So,
but hopefully many after that.
Yes. Host McCaskey this Friday the 21st at Gursky. That's senior night. We're going to talk about that shortly. Go to Manheim Township October 28th, Friday. That is the last game of the regular season. There will be no Wilson football November 4th, November 5th, that first weekend in November. That's when playoffs generally would be starting, but D3 6A is shifted by a week because of our entrance into the state tournament. District 3 at 6A level has decided to give everyone a bye that first weekend in November. So the D3 6A quarterfinals will start November 11th, Friday, November 11th, or Saturday, November 12th, depending on who the host school is. And then we'll proceed every Friday, Saturday after that until your team has lost. So hopefully that clears it up. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what's to come. But last thing before we move on to previewing the McCaskey game, we get to hear from our players. We did interview people after the victory. Had missed out on it the last 2 weeks. One because of my headache at Mifflin. My migraine didn't. And it was raining. It was just like miserable. Even though we won, it's just like, let's get out of here.
Right.
And then last week, we don't talk to the players and coaches after a loss. But that wasn't the case on Friday. It was a beautiful night. Phillies had won. Wilson won.
Gosh.
Wanted to talk to some players. So we pulled aside 3 of the guys that were important in the win and talked to them for a couple minutes. And we're going to play that for you right now. All right, welcome back. Here we are post-game after Wilson's big victory over Penn Manor, 56-7. Have a couple of the key contributors tonight joining us. So, guys, how's it feel to get back in the win column?
Amazing. Nothing much to say else. It's amazing.
How was practice this week?
We changed a lot. We picked up the intensity. We knew that we needed to keep it rolling, and we had to get back in the win column. Just our new goal is district finals. So, section's kind of behind us now. We just gotta keep moving toward the district and refocus on that.
Now, this was a better Penn Manor team we've seen in the last few years. They went toe-to-toe with Cedar Crest, beat Cedar Crest. They were on the upswing, and you guys came in down and just shut them down in every phase. Was 42-0 at halftime. Courtesy of you guys, special teams, once again coming out on top. Cam, they weren't getting you the ball. You're used to that. You don't get too many opportunities. But when you get the opportunity, you make it count. So going into this week, was the flip reverse? Was that something you guys have been practicing to get the ball in your hands when they're not kicking to you?
Yeah, something we did practice. Took a little bit to get it down. It's a little different having 2 guys in the back when our blocking teams used to only having one. It takes 1 guy less out of a blocking scheme for the wall. So we repped it, and we got it to work today.
And the wall was there for you once again, as it's been every time you've taken to the house. The Coach Doms, when we talk to him about your punt returns, he always talks about how all of you guys have bought in to blocking on punt return. Eddie got you the ball, but I know Adam's one of the key guys leading you to the end zone. Adam, you got in the end zone tonight yourself. How'd that feel?
Felt good, just the first varsity touchdown, man.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Finally get in there.
Awesome. So
guys, 6-2, extended all your streaks. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Non-losing season, winning season. I know that's a big one that's always harped on throughout the year. Now, like you guys said, I said on districts, but next year you got McCaskey, followed by regular season finale against Manheim Township. So, Cam, not a lot of work early or in this game because you guys put it away so quickly. What was the mindset entering the game? What did you want to accomplish tonight?
As a team, kind of just grow from last week. I mean, obviously with the upset that we had last week, just came in this week and this game just knowing that we wanted to get out by the first half and kind of just fix all the mistakes that we made last week and correct them this week.
Now, Coach Raffoff said this to me at halftime already and said it was great to see Eddie getting those opportunities on punt return because now he's put on tape that he isn't a guy that can kick to and think, don't worry, we'll get him quickly, because you made a few people miss, although I know the coaches were getting on you about getting tackled from behind a few times. So we'll work on the shiftiness in practice this week. But all right, the two of you guys back there, it means a lot to that third phase of the football game. But very workmanlike victory, made quick work of the Comets on to McCaskey this week. So congratulations on the win, and good luck next week.
Go Dogs. Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Go get your maize sandwich now.
Oh yeah, well that was a pretty well planned plug there at the end. You did say, I think I caught that. So
right, yeah,
we'll keep that in.
So it's
That'll
always
keep the sponsors
it's always
happy.
interesting because I don't want to end it too soon, but I don't want to end it like too late. When the conversation shifts or something like that. But I caught that, and I mentioned to your dad. I was like, I think he'll like that.
Well, he needs anything to make him happy right now with the score that you just relayed to me.
No, let's keep that going.
I feel like this might be one of the less watched live shows because so many people are tuning into Cowboys Eagles. But I mean, really, Wilson football should be number one in your life. So I don't give you a pass, and I'm mad at all of you that are not tuning in. But please download and listen to it after the fact.
Well, we could have done it during the Dolphins game today.
You could have the last 3 weeks, yeah. Yeah, so. Oh, I wanted to mention it during that, and I posted something about it on Twitter, but I didn't post anything on Facebook, which is Facebook and Instagram, where a lot of people get the photo posts of mine, but streaks extended.
Yeah.
So, I mean, once they got to 5, by and large, you knew that the non-losing streak was going to be extended. But I always like to wait and make sure you get to 6 because there's essentially no way of losing either streak once you get to 6, unless there be something really crazy that happened that like you actually lose a game, but then somehow get put back in the play. Like I don't even know if that could happen.
Right.
So I'm just like, once we get to 6, we're good, because even if you end the season 6-4 and then lose a playoff game, doesn't matter. Both are still intact. So yes, 6-2 on the season. Wilson has extended their streaks in style. I believe it's 59 years in a row now, seasons with a non-losing record. The last losing record at Wilson was in 1963, the year before the arrival of Coach John Gursky. And then that would make the winning season streak 47 in a row. I believe there's a 12-year
now the
difference.
Longest in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure.
I know we talked about that the last couple of years.
Right, and I'm not sure which one. Like I always forget which one.
Right.
I feel like it's the non-losing one.
Okay, it could be that one.
But yeah, it's impressive. It's the best in the state. So I don't know if anyone has the information for that around the country in terms of straight consecutive winning and non-losing seasons. But yes, so 59 straight non-losing seasons, 47 straight winning seasons. Just fantastic, and it just says so much about the program. And I know there's always ebbs and flows. I mean, and this is not meant as throwing shade. It's just an example. But just look what's happening with Mifflin right now.
Right.
They had an incredible run of 16. Ever since they left the LL and went into the Berks Conference, they became a dominant program. And the last couple of years, especially when Nick Singleton was there, they were getting statewide acclaim. And they're suffering a rough patch this season. And that's just to show how like incredible nearly 6 decades of that not happening at Wilson. It's it's the best in the state, and it has to be one of the best in the nation. It's a tough thing to do, and it's why so many people take so much pride in it continuing. There's been a few rough years here and there, but there's never been fewer wins than losses since 1963.
It's absurd.
We were just laughing and sort of crying inside about the birth years of the kids we're coaching right now.
Yes.
And just thinking like where we were at in our lives when these kids were born, but to think like, we were decades away from being born the last time Wilson's had a losing season.
Before my dad was in high school, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a crazy number. And honestly, I feel
almost
like
as crazy as before Dom started coaching at Wilson. It's only slightly fewer years than when my dad was at Wilson.
Yeah. So, Coach Doms has actually been around for nearly all of the winning seasons. Very close, because I believe he arrived in 79. I think it was 79, because I think we've had a discussion about how Coach Doms and Doc Moyer came in the same year. Yeah. It was the late 70s. So, and the straight winning season started in was it 75? I don't know. It's a lot. It's been a long time.
Yes.
So, 59 straight non-losing, 47 straight winning. So, all right. Last thing here, last few minutes of the show, we're going to take time to preview Wilson's Game 9 against Lancaster-McCaskey senior night this Friday, October 21st at Gursky Stadium. According to the Wilson stats book, this is the 50th meeting between the two schools. Wilson leads the series 41-7-1. Wilson has won the last 20 in the series, including last year's win also at Gursky, 59-12. That was the PA National Guard, Army National Guard night, where cool. We wore the jerseys that are I don't think you can see it on the camera, but the jersey that is hanging up behind here. I can move the camera. It's amazing that I can do that. Can you? Oh no, it's behind Dan the man, who dropped in the record books today as Matt Ryan passed him for all-time passing yardage, which just doesn't seem right.
You're not ready to concede that Matt Ryan's better than him,
It's not talk about Christmas decorations. It's belittling the amazing career of Dan Marino. The last McCaskey win, let's see if Justin can guess when the last McCaskey win was.
2003.
Yes, it was in 2003.
That's a good guess.
Give me the exact date. Just throw it out there.
I'm going to go October 17th.
Wrong month.
Oh,
September 26th, 2003.
That was my next guess.
And where was it? Home or away?
Oh, I'm just trying to think through. I'm trying to reason to my answer here. I'm going to go with home.
It was away.
Okay.
It was at McCaskey on September 26, 2003, 31-14 loss. The Red Tornado are coached by Ben Thompson. He's in his second season there, although technically I think last year was serving under an interim tag, much like another Thompson had been doing earlier.
Yes.
It's spelled differently, but one of them has taken their professional baseball team to the NLCS, so you can guess which one of those guys has done that. But McCaskey started the season actually with a win,
right?
So things were looking up. They won in overtime against John Bartram on the road. That was supposed to be played at Villanova, but it got changed at the last minute. I'm not really sure what happened there, but they won 30-24 in overtime against John Bartram. Then they had the unfortunate meeting with Elizabethtown in week 2. Elizabethtown's been on a tear.
Yeah, very strong year for them.
They only have one loss, and it's by 3 points to Solenko, who is undefeated at this time. But they lost to Elizabethtown, and they haven't won since. They lost. They got shut out by Cedar Cliff, got beat up by Hempfield, got shut out by Plymouth Whitemarsh. Manheim Township beat them 55-6. They got shut out by Reading 38-0. And they lost this past week to Cedar Crest 42-19. So things are not going well for Ben Thompson's Red Tornado. Coming to West Lawn for a second straight year. Again, Wilson has beaten them the last 20 times we have played them. and it's been nearly 2 decades since their last victory. So honestly, outside of the Wilson streak against Penn Manor, this McCaskey may be second in the number of consecutive wins Wilson has against the team. With 20 in a row in the series. This series in the 90s and then into the early 2000s, McCaskey was one of the teams that was McCaskey and Hempfield kind of alternated throughout the 90s and in the early 2000s were the teams that were challenging Wilson for the title. Either be Manheim Township might have a good year in there, and Mifflin one year had a good year in the mid 90s and ended up sharing a title. But by and large, it seemed to be Wilson or Hempfield, Wilson or McCaskey. That's how it worked out. But McCaskey has not had a strong team since that 2003 team.
Yeah, basically since that group worked their way through the system.
That group that we talk about all the time when we were in high school.
Like back in my day.
We do it all the time. But hey, it's true. So McCaskey's one biggest loss was wide receiver defensive back Josiah Gray, although they also lost defensive lineman Eli Rodriguez. Not to graduation, he moved to Manheim Township. So and he is having a very good year for Manheim Township. Their key returners are Will Almeida, Jose Garcia, and their quarterback, who I feel like has been there as long as Sean Clifford's been at Penn State, Matthew Remash, who is a senior this year. He's gotten looks from college teams, but as one of the coaches, I talked about this game a little bit late Friday night, saying, I can't believe this kid's still playing for them.
Right.
He hasn't played against Wilson much, if at all, because he's usually missing the game due to an injury. So we'll see if we see quarterback Remash this Friday night against the Bulldogs and what would be his last attempt to beat Wilson.
Right.
But it has been a rough go of it down in Lancaster for McCaskey this year. That the loss at Reading 38-0 certainly stood out because Reading, while improving, hadn't been playing great as they got into the thick of the Section 1
Didn't surprise
schedule.
us at all that Reading won that game. When we saw Reading, we know, and we talked about this with some people this weekend, like, seeing what they were able to do with, like Ruben Rodriguez playing and those guys, like, it wasn't at all a surprise. Losing 38-0 was a surprise.
Yes.
Like that caught us off guard.
Yeah, it was shocking to see that. I know, and they had some on the field, off the field extracurricular.
Bill Snook caught
some
good things documenting
the players had some disagreements,
yes.
but the coaching staff's got things settled and talked to them about it. And Bill Snook took great photos of the coming together at the end to iron out differences and just understand that this is a game and there's bigger things in life. Very, very good job by the coaching staffs, and awesome that photographer Bill Snook got those images. But McCaskey comes to Gursky Friday for Wilson's senior night. And
the key is they while things went really well on Friday night at Penn Manor, there's still things that they need to improve on, things they can be getting better each week. Handle your business this week, because you've got 2 left. You're talking about those predictions. Who knows what will happen with those standings? We talk about it. You make the best educated guesses you can on some of those games.
I try my best.
But the only thing that is in Wilson's control, obviously not our control, but Wilson's control, is whether or not they win those last 2 games. Win those last 2 games, put yourself in as good of a position in going into the playoffs as you can.
Take care of your business.
But also use the opportunity to make sure you're firing on all cylinders. That's the key. And we've talked about it with last year's team. Last year's team seemed lost right early in the season, seemed lost about halfway through the season, but found their way in the second half of that season. And when they found their way, they became a force. And York saw it, and then Central York saw it, and Harrisburg saw it. They were a force, and that's where we're at right now. Yes, that loss to Hempfield last week, that stinks, but I thought Eddie did a great job of kind of responding. It's not what we wanted, but that's over with. We need to focus on moving forward, and that means handling your business now.
Right. And Wilson needs to take care of business against McCaskey and then take care of business at Manheim Township. Township this week hosts Penn Manor. before welcoming the Bulldogs in the season finale. And Hempfield, for all of you out there, hoping and wishing for them to stumble, they would have to do so both on the road in Lebanon at Cedar Crest this Friday night. And if you remember last year, Cedar Crest beat Hempfield, which was a bit of a shocker last year with the way Hempfield was trending and playing. Cedar Crest did pull the upset on Hempfield last year, so that the Falcons and Black Knights will tussle this Friday night in Lebanon. And then last week of the season, Hempfield comes to Berks County to play Reading. So if any of you wanted to become a Red Knight fan, week 10 is the one to wish Reading the best of luck. Right. Crazy things have happened before, both in the section and in playoff seeding. So anything can happen, and that's what's on the docket these next 2 weeks for interest from a Wilson perspective. So, but I think that pretty much covers everything here. Justin, any other announcements or anything you want to mention before we get out of here?
Not that I can think of, no.
So come out this Friday night to support the team, but especially the seniors who very likely are playing their final game on the turf at Gursky Stadium. And, wish them good luck. Come and cheer them on. And just get excited for another Wilson Football Friday.
Yep.
All right. Then I think that covers it for us here at the Bulldog Hour. Again, appreciate everyone's support. Continue to like and share and subscribe and rate and review us on all those platforms out there. Continue to spread the word. But until next time, I'm Joe Mays for Justin Raffoff and the Bulldog Hour. Until next time, remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.